our next talk is from Craig Jellick, who is our co-founder at Acorn. Craig has been working with Darren and I for at least, 15 years. So this is like heavy disclaimer period. We're going to be, I promise, lots of softball questions, lots of easy questions. Oh my gosh, Craig, that seems amazing. What incredible work. No, it should be fun. Craig, thanks for doing this. I realized it was a bit of short notice. We had someone drop out, so kind of jumped in and filled the slot. But I'm looking forward to the conversation. MCP gateways are literally, something we're hearing about just in the last month. I've been hearing about it everywhere. And so I think, this is a great opportunity to kind of talk about MCP Gateway and then share the open source project that you're leading.
Sure. Yeah, I wanted that because I was so opposed to Craig coming on here because it's pitching our own software. It's like, this is what we're, Shannon and I would start our startup or whatever. So I was like, no, I can't stand it. Like, I don't want to pitch our own software. I'm very much a technology person. I hate to sell anything. Shannon's actually sales background. But my big justification here is I just want to make it abundantly clear. Everything, it's open source. So everything you do kind of what we're doing, you can download this and run it yourself. It's open source. Yeah. Anyways.
All right, dude.
Hand it over to Craig. And then I promised Craig I would ask very difficult questions afterwards.
Well, I'm excited.
Awesome.
All right. So keep the slides pretty short here, as I think, as you mentioned, gateways are talked about a lot. So we kind of understand what we're getting. Sorry, click over here. So, but just to level set, Obot is an open source enterprise platform for managing and securing MCP servers. The key things it's going to give you is the ability for centralized IT to own, curate, and manage that centralized catalog of MCP servers. It gives end users the ability to access and to connect to those servers, whether it's through our chat platform or through the client of their choice. It's also a hosting platform. So if your enterprise is looking to, run and host their own MCP servers, you can just leverage that ability that's built directly into Obot. And finally, the gateway aspect makes it so that we're proxying all communication to the MCP servers through our gateway, which gives you centralized observability, security, and compliance. And then once again, we're hitting on very much on the open source aspect of this. So the other thing I wanted to share in the slides really quickly is just the architecture. So as I go through the demo, you have a decent idea of sort of what you're looking at here. Pretty simple slide here. At the top, you can see we have our own chat platform, Obot Chat, but really you can connect from any MCP-enabled agent, such as Cursor, or Claude, or VS Code. And then the three main components of Obot are the LLM gateway, which is primarily used by Obot Chat, the catalog, which is how administrators, manage MCP servers available, manage access control to them, but then also how users discover the servers that are available to them. And then finally, the gateway. So anytime you're connecting to an MCP server using Obot, you're going through the gateway, and that gateway is proxying to either remote MCP servers that can be external to your organization or ones hosted within your organization, either in Obot or internally in your own cloud infrastructure. So that does it for sort of the architecture. The only other thing I want to share here is just where you can go to find out more information. Obot.ai is our landing page. Importantly, you can go to chat.obot.ai to try out the end user experience, free to use. You get a pretty nice chat experience with baked in MCP integration. And then to get started running the open source version yourself, just go to docs.obot.ai, and that'll drop you into just sort of the quick start on how to get this going. And all of that is linked from obot.ai itself. So with that said, and sort of the slides done, I'll jump into the demo here. And I'm zoomed in pretty far, so hopefully everything renders well. But I wanted to actually start with the end user experience, just to level set on sort of, the capabilities that a organization using Obot, sort of what their end users can expect to see and do. So here you see a pretty familiar chat interface, right? So I'll just say hello here to kick off the chat, and you'll see just basic communication. Now, the other things you can see sort of on the left, we have a project-based structure rather. You'll note that you can come in and configure a project, name, description, of course, but then also sort of instructions for a system prompt to, control exactly how the project behaves. You can add knowledge files at a project level. And then sort of as you're using the project and we have a memory feature, the memories will show up here and you can manage those from here. If I cancel out of configuration, we'll see we're here looking at the chat. Now, the chats here basically are just the history of your chats within this project. Tasks are interesting. I'll kind of circle back to those. Those are basically very sort of simple automated chats so that you can do things repetitively. I don't know if you heard that ding there, but I'll close my email. And finally, connectors are where users can discover MCP servers. So I will just drop in and add the Gmail MCP server here, and I'll click connect. And we should see here, okay, authenticating. This is actually a server we've written ourselves and to talk to the Gmail API. I'm going to connect it to my test email here and continue, and we're good to go. So now you can see I have this Gmail MCP server set up. I can jump in here and discover what tools are available. You can see sort of the things you would expect. This is also where I can enable or disable tools. Here, we'll just ask it, what is my most recent email? And there shouldn't be anything surprising here for folks that have been using MCP servers in chat. You'll see it make that tool call and get it back here. So just to level set, that's sort of the basics of the functionality. Within this catalog, you can kind of see this is what I as a user have access to. And we'll jump into how administrators control that access later. But you can see here sort of all the different MCP servers. This is our curated catalog from open source and external like remote servers that we found were particularly good. I'm demoing from our demo environment just so I don't, leak any information of real users from chat.obot.ai, so you can see someone's testing a HubSpot integration. So from here, I think the next thing I wanted to show is just what this looks like. Oh, I'm sorry. What this looks like to connect from other clients. So for that, we have this My Connectors dashboard. And here you can just kind of see this is just sort of a native view into our catalog, all the entries we have. You can see I previously connected to Gmail and Tably up here. And if I just click connect here, we'll see here's the URL. So I can drop this URL into any particular MCP client and be off and running. I'm going to copy it, and then we'll jump over to VS Code and do the same thing. So I'm going to add a server here in VS Code. Drop this URL in, just call it Gmail. And you can see it pop up over here. It's running and has 16 tools. So now it wants to do that authentication round. It's going to jump me out to same thing, OAuth flow. And we're off and running here. We can explore the tools. You can see the Gmail server has all these tools here. So we'll just say the same thing here. What's my most recent email? And get prompted to allow that. And once again, we're off and running. It's going to read the email. So it did a list. Now it's going to do a read. And I'll give you back some details. So great, sort of connecting to MCP servers in the catalog from either our native chat or from an external client. From here, I will just circle back super quickly to give you a super quick demo into tasks. So a task here is just sort of basic. I can give it steps. It's going to use the same MCP servers or connectors that are in the project here. And I could do something like read my most recent email and turn it into a haiku. Haiku. And we'll run that. See it do the same list emails.
Craig, while you're demoing this, I had a quick question. I don't think it's totally clear necessarily where this is all running. So this is software. You're running it on, you're hosting this, obviously. But for a user that deploys this is software they're running on their Kubernetes infrastructure?
Correct, yes. And you can install it on Kubernetes. We have a simple start that is just a Docker run that'll kind of run it all. If you wanted to try it out, just run it locally on your Docker desktop. But sort of production grade setup is expected to be you deploy this into a Kubernetes cluster. We have a Helm chart to do so.
Yeah, I just want to throw, because like it's super cool. Like one thing that's great about is you can just simply Docker run this. This is all open source. The kind of crummy thing about all of MCP is there's so much OAuth involved, and so it's like, for like demo purposes, you really have to set up all the OAuth beforehand and everything. It's not easy to just go like, oh, Docker run, show it. It's like nothing with authentication will work.
Mm-hmm. So yes, with that's sort of, quick demo of like the end user experience. Now, what is the administrator seeing? Well, we'll jump over to that. Sorry, this is actually, sorry. So I am an administrator as well. So I'll just open the admin dashboard here. And again, so first thing, the admin has deployed Obot internally. Probably the first thing they're going to do is set up an auth provider. So you can see sort of our supported auth providers here. And these are typical, pretty easy to add, as well as we encounter users with different use cases. The second thing you're obviously going to want to set up for the chat experience is a model provider. So this is, we basically have a plugin system to integrate with any of the major model providers. And this is what will ultimately power that Obot chat experience. Once you have those two things together, you're sort of off and running. You can start working on your catalog. So every instance of Obot ships with our official catalog, which you can see here. We're adding to that all the time, but you can start adding your own servers as well. So you can either add manually from the web console here, or you can add them from a Git server. And in fact, our official catalog is just this GitHub repo, and everything in here is open source too. So you can pull useful things from there as necessary. But basically what you'll end up seeing here as you build out your own sort of GitOps powered MCP catalog, you'll define them this way. And as you can use PRs to review, and as they get merged, they'll automatically be synced into Obot itself. So I'm going to close that so I don't keep clicking in the wrong place. So here we are, we're looking at the catalog. Just to give you an example of adding a server, when I click add a server, you see three options. So single user, multi-user, and remote server. And this is really sort of meeting the MCP ecosystem where it is right now. So, what does single user server even mean? Well, most of the MCP servers that are out in the world were written using sort of the first protocol, standard IO. And when you have a standard IO server, you really, that's not multi-tenant in any way. You really need an instance per user using it. So the idea is if you set up a single user server, when someone connects to it, this is completely transparent to the end user, but they'll get their own instance of that server. Multi-user server is, okay, you've written a good server, it's scalable, it can handle multi-tenancy, it can handle more than one user connecting at a time. It's written using the streamable HTTP protocol. So you would set it up that way. And then finally, remote server is, I don't need to deploy anything. This is running somewhere in the world. And I just want to expose it in the catalog so that users can connect to it, and so that I can get all those advanced, auditing and usage capabilities that I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to very quickly add a remote server here, and I will grab Linear's. So Craig's Linear demo. You can see you can give a nice description. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to drop the URL in for this. So this is Linear's MCP server. So it's OAuth enabled. So really all it takes is dropping that URL in, and you're off and running. Now this is asking me how I want to expose it, what users I want to expose it to. You can see we have 3 teams here, marketing, engineering, and the AI engineering team. However, we also have a rule that just exposes everyone to everything to everyone. And that's enabled in this system. So that's enough for me. I can just click continue. And now this server is in the catalog. Speaking of access control, I'll jump over to that and show that super quickly. This is not the, there's not a ton to show here, but this is just the idea that it's, you are controlling who has access to what servers by way of the intersection of servers and users and groups. So if you see here, we can kind of scroll through different users. Group support is actually, we just merged the first piece of that yesterday for GitHub, and we'll iterate through sort of the other auth providers in the coming days. But the idea there would be you'd be able to search for groups backed by your auth provider and just drop them in here. This particular rule is a catch everything rule. So this is going to just say everyone that's able to log into Obot and, and just let them have access to every single server. But you can also do very specific servers. So that's access control. Now, last thing I want to do is just kind of show that. Let's just drop in that Craig's linear demo. So I'm going to click connect to server. And it's going to prompt me to authenticate. This has bounced me out to linear. Once again, we're OAuthing things. And we're all set. So now I can say, what linear issues do I have? I might have needed to say projects instead, actually. We'll see what it does here. Cool, no assigned issue, that's fine. I'm not a linear user. I just create an account for the purpose of this, purposes of demoing. But I did that just so we can start to explore some of the other features here. Most interesting, I think, is audit logs. So in the audit log screen, you can see exactly what's going on within your system. So most recently, you can see I literally just did a call to list my issues, so I can check it out here and see all the details. I think the last demo had something very similar. But this is sort of a cross system, and it takes its inspiration from the logging dashboards you see in all the modern cloud consoles, as well as things like Datadog. So you can kind of see a stack of the different calls that are being made here, and you can filter by sort of anything you see on the table. You're able to filter by as well. So that's just giving you sort of that bird's eye view, letting you debug, understand what's going on. Usage is kind of like that view of, okay, who's doing what are the most what's being used the most in my system, whether it's tool calls or servers in general. Things in the system are skewed because it's actually our testing system. So you'll see sort of, focus on a lot of testing of certain servers at different times. Get response times, either average, sort of, we can see that whenever Firecrawl is called, it always takes a long time, which makes sense. It's going out and scraping a page. And then sort of this is just very specifically over whatever time frame was selected, individual tool calls. So that's sort of giving you your insights into usage of the MCP servers. Additionally, you have this view into chat threads. So whenever someone's using the chat experience, you can see, exactly sort of, what they're saying and what's going on there. So this is just very specifically for admins in case they need to jump in and debug what's going on. Last thing I'll show on this front is filters. So I dropped a filter in here. A filter is basically, you can inject this into, it's a webhook. So you can set up your own webhook, and that webhook will be called anytime a call to an MCP server is made. And you can set up different selectors, right? So a selector is basically saying what tool method what method. Most often it's probably going to be tool calls, and then what identifiers tools too. So if you just wanted to be on a very specific tool name rather than all tools, you could specify that there. and you can either set it up to hit any MCP server or very specific ones as well. So that's sort of like, the first phase of that MCP guardrail capability. And the one I set up here is actually, it just kind of detects for the word hacking and will reject the call if it hits it. I think eventually we'll add built-in filters, but the idea is sort of maximum flexibility, webhook based. Folks can basically bring their own and have full control over that.
Craig, you're running out of time, buddy. I think you've hit most of the key stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else you need to touch on?
Yeah, no, that's it. Last thing I think is for anyone using chat, the admin has full control over sort of the chat experience. So from that splash screen to the system prompt to what models are exposed. So yeah, that kind of does it for the demo. Once again, I think the last thing I'll say is obot.ai to land on, or chat.obot.ai to give it a try yourself.
Awesome. Thanks for diving in so much depth. I don't know if you touched on this though, but you built this with a very clear sort of enterprise type expectation. So what do you think the target market is for this? Who should buy it? Who should use it? Who should download it? Use the open source? Like what's your pitch?
Yeah, so we were just at a pretty big conference called AI4, and we saw a lot of interest there. And we saw interest from sort of relatively big organizations with a forward-looking architecture team. So they kind of see MCP on the horizon. They want to be prepared for it. They want to have a plan in place. And so this really appealed to them because they just want to have that ability to control and manage and have visibility into the system, from day one. So, we've talked to companies where they're managing MCP server access through a document in SharePoint. That's how they kind of expose the catalog. So just kind of bringing some order to that chaos is really where it starts. So, the reason, like Darren said, open source is in our DNA. We just want it super easy for people to pick up, try out. You can run it locally, you can run it in Kubernetes cluster, whatever works for you.
So talk a little bit about how you solve the proxying stuff. So you built a proxy to proxy every single MCP, whether it's yours or it's running somewhere else or it's like a third-party hosted one. How did you do that? Like, what's the proxy? Is it using an existing service mesh or something, or did you build something net new that you're actually running?
We built something net new, and that's been sort of like an amazing learning experience because, like, at the end of the day, if you can imagine the proxies here and the clients here, the proxy is a server to the client and a client to the downstream server. So sort of just being in there in the mix, like we've just have touched absolutely every single part of the protocol and sort of like hit all of those interesting and weird use cases. So at the end of the day, it's code we wrote very specifically. Bits of it are built on top of Darren's MCP client, Nanobot. But yeah, just kind of homegrown. Started off, there are bits we're leveraging when we run sort of one of those single user servers. We're actually using another open source project called Super Gateway. I'm sorry, we converted to Nanobot.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, it's fascinating because like if anyone's followed me on Twitter, I would complain about the Go SDK. And the reason why, because that's still being developed, is we had to build our own Go, because everything's in Go for the proxy. We had to build our own Go implementation of MCP, and it's quite different from what you would see in the SDKs that exist out there, because those are very oriented towards writing the server or writing the client, whereas we're right in the middle of the gateway. So it gets very low level and very kind of technical, and so we've become quite experts on the protocol.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to throw out a couple things, because if anyone knows like us, like our team or whatever, we previously did Rancher and things, and this is kind of like in our DNA of creating these open source projects, these platforms or whatever. And so when MCP came around, like I'm so ridiculously bought into the idea of MCP. Like everything, it checks off all the boxes for me. I just think it's going to be smashing success. It has been. I think it has a great future. So it's like, it's just like I really do believe that there's like a new platform for AI. Like where are we going? Like we need this new substrate or whatever, and MCP is it. And so what's really fascinating to me is when we started building this of like, well, what do we really need? One of the things we realized is like, it's not so much about the hosting. You know, I think the world is distributed, and you know, you can put things wherever the heck you want. You start looking at the protocol. The power is like the protocol, and like so. We saw this in the infrastructure space before with like service mesh. Like when you get in the middle of the communication path, you have so much visibility and things like that. And so we really focused on like what can we get out of the fact that we have full visibility to what's going on in the protocol. Because as this evolves into MCPs doing agents, you can imagine all of that agentic traffic is all going to be going over MCP2. So it's like we have full ability. So it doesn't really matter where you're running these agents. The third party, you're hosting them yourself, or you're hosting them on Obot. Obot can run it too. It doesn't really matter. We still have the same visibility to the protocol, and kind of can really see what's going on. Because like one of the big things about AI is just people are always concerned about kind of like, what is it doing? Like there's these parts where AI fundamentally can choose its own path, and so what happens and all that stuff. But I don't know, I've been super fascinated with this stuff. This is like a really fun project, and I love that it's open source. Anybody can run this. Just try it out. It's pretty cool.
Craig, on that topic, like just as you had, coming out of a conference and talking to people about this, what are you hearing from like the operational teams that are thinking about like things like observability and tracing, and like what do people, I'm running an MCP server, what do I care about? What are like the 3 things you need to think about when you're running an MCP server? It's a multi-tenant thing. It's starting to scale up and people are using it heavily internally. What should I worry about?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think honestly, the folks we were talking to be honest, they are early, and they're at the point where like, man, I'm just starting to think about this problem. So operationally, they're sort of like just discovering that themselves. Now, I will say we had some interesting talks as well with folks that are like wanting to build end user facing public MCP servers, and that's just like a whole other sort of like level of. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same, but you just don't. You're thinking about the problem differently because it's exposed to the world, and so your concerns for security are even higher. But at the end of the day, it was those key things. It was observability, it was security, it was sort of understanding when things go wrong and how to resolve them. Mm-hmm. And honestly, another one was like just a big problem was how do we make it so that our users can discover and consume these things? Like that seemed to be a core problem that folks were thinking about too.
Well, it's interesting because you give your demo today, you started with the chat side, which I was surprised. I kind of sort of assumed it's a gateway. You're going to start show me the admin side and how do I onboard MCPs and kind of put some security around them and expose them. But you're like, no, and I think this is maybe from the conversations as well. It's like half of the in an enterprise and an organization, it's like 90% of the people are probably not adding config files to Claude desktop to get access to an MCP or thing. Like you're putting the work into building these, as Rupesh sort of was saying, MCP all the things. Every application has an MCP endpoint or an MCP agent. It's the consumption that's going to be part of the thing. Yeah. And I know listening to people talk, I mean, people have a very wildly varying types of internal chat clients right now. There's custom home-built ones. There's people who are trying to use like Microsoft Copilot or OpenAI Enterprise or Claude Enterprise. There's a lot of people who are trying. I mean, there's Goose out there. I've seen some people kind of, the team at Block gave a great demo of how they're using Goose at the last MCP Summit as a way to access these things. But then they were like, oh, it was pretty tough for non-developers. We had to really start pre-building in the MCP servers because we didn't really want them to go and add them, because then all of a sudden we're getting tons of support calls and stuff. So I do think there's going to be, I think it was an interesting choice, but I kind of agree, like showing how people are going to use this stuff and start to stream them together. I still worry that people are going to struggle to figure out which MCP server to use to solve problems. And I like, some of what Rupesh was showing earlier. It was like, oh, pick a couple server, tools and then build a new MCP server. I think there's a lot of opportunity to get this closer to people like me who, you know, we can probably vibe code an MCP server now, given how easy it's getting. But the reality is just managing file systems and dealing with stuff. I don't know what I'm doing.
Disagrees with you.
No, thumbs up. No, it was I think it's really interesting, that layer of consumption.
You know, it's because it's you know, it's hard. Like, I struggle with MCP and the fact that it's very, very developer oriented. And then so I kind of like, when I talk to developers, they're like, it's taking over the world. And I try to point out like, hey, I believe that. I believe it's going that way. But that you have to realize everyone doing MCP right now, most of it is like developers touching this. But that's not the end goal. Is like, sorry, I don't want to say most of it. It's like, because I talk to developers, it's like we're all hacking on MCP servers and putting it into VS Code. But it's like the end goal is really to put it pretty much like into a chatbot or maybe a server-side agent that's a little more complex. But like, so it's like what a lot of the enterprise and things are doing is it's like, it's not so much that they're writing MCP servers because they want to get them to their developers. They're writing MCP servers because they're trying to get it to like the end user who's running, you know, Claude desktop or something like that. They're trying to, because like they see like once one team builds something, they're like, oh, I hooked up this one internal API to AI. Look how amazing this is. And then they want to give it to their like, you know, other team members or whatever. But I was just going to say, like, one thing I definitely see with people is that it's so easy to write MCP servers. Like, there's not really a challenge in writing them because we already see there's just thousands and thousands. It's not very difficult to write them. And so it's like what enterprises or whatever are struggling or, you know, starting to see is like this wave of like, holy crap, everyone's writing these things. What the heck do I do? And like, it's, you know, how did
I had
they
a person tell me recently they had 1,000 new MCP servers created.
I can't believe that. It's happening. It reminds me of like, you know, back in like the Docker days or whatever, where they're like.
It's funny though, because I say that, and then we were at that.
Yeah.
You know, I was at that same conference that Craig spoke at, and you know, standing there talking to people as they came by to talk, at least 70, probably like 60% of the people didn't even know what MCP was. And this is an AI conference with 8,000 people there to like. It was not a consumer level conference. This was a, you know, it cost a lot of money to come. It was a enterprise AI conference. These were people who worked at companies you would have heard of, and they were there to learn about AI, but they didn't know what MCP was. And so. And I'm talking like more than half. It was like, what is MCP? You know, I see MCP, but I don't know what that means. So I do think, you know, it's like people are either completely already bought in and totally get it, or it's still, you know, it still hasn't quite penetrated the core IT teams, the, you know, the non-AI engineer, the more business type users who are, you know, doing operational stuff. So we got to wrap, guys. We've been chatting for too long. Craig, thank you so much for joining us today and stepping in. And we really appreciate the demo. Darren, as always, it's been a lot of fun, and we will see everyone else in 2 weeks. We're off next week, so we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.